guys, welcome back to Hench and Saunters, and I can finally review Deadpool. Now before I continue with the review, I will say I'm not a huge fan of Deadpool. I'd never really claimed to be. However, I did subscribe from issue number 1 when Marvel relaunched the Deadpool comic book title for Marvel Now. So I've read a whole bunch of those comic books, as well as a bunch of the stuff by Daniel Way a few years back. So I've read enough to be familiar with the character and to know what a good representation of Deadpool would be and what a bad representation of Deadpool would be. So the film's directed by Tim Miller, who is a first-time director, and you'd never guess, after seeing this film, it's a very competently made film. He was an animator beforehand and created the opening titles for films like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Thor: The Dark World. Now, as everybody knows, the film stars Ryan Reynolds as the Merc with the Mouth, also stars Morena Baccarin of Firefly fame, and a host of other actors. The development of this film is really interesting, and I think that could make an incredible documentary on its own. For example, the motion capture or CGI test footage that was leaked a couple of years back was instrumental in financing of this film. Without that leak, Fox wouldn't have understood the demand. People want the Deadpool comic brought to life. They want this incredibly meta superhero movie where he breaks the fourth wall, where he makes ridiculous jokes, where he pokes fun at himself. And that's exactly what we got. This film is hilarious. It's funnier than some comedies that have come out in recent memory. A lot of the success of the jokes in this film are owed to the writers, of course, but also Ryan Reynolds, who was instrumental in the development of this film. He says it himself, he's been trying to get this film made for 10 years. I was one of many fans who read the leaked script a couple of years back. I was very happy to see that a lot of the things that made that a great script have been retained in this film, such as the opening titles, which are excellent. And the opening credits really give you an idea of exactly what kind of film this will be. And I knew from the get-go that I would love this film. I'm going to echo what many other people have said. Ryan Reynolds was born to play Deadpool. And after the success of this movie, you've only got to look at the box office numbers. The success of this movie will catapult his career in a completely different direction. And chances are he's going to be playing Deadpool for the rest of his life now. And I couldn't be happier with that. To touch on the direction of the film, Tim Miller has such an understanding of this character, and the film has such a great sense of momentum that it never feels dull. And my criticism of the film is that it does sometimes fall into the formula of a superhero origin story, but thankfully, because of the disjointed narrative, it does keep it a little bit fresh and again keep the momentum moving. The performances across the board are great in this film, and the inclusion of Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead was also great to get a bit of that connecting tissue to the X-Men universe. And it is really good to see a character who is as big on the screen as he is in the comic books. Colossus looks like a comic book character in this movie. It's ridiculous. He looks ridiculous, but in a good way, in a very comic book movie kind of way. I'd also like to say that Morena Baccarin was great in this film too. She could have very easily fallen into the stereotypical superhero girlfriend role, but fortunately the writers knew what they were doing, and she also knew what she was doing with her character. She's incredibly likeable, and I buy into the romance straight away. Now, with regards to the accessibility of this film, the jokes, although some of them are quite immature, a lot of them are very mature, very adult. There's euphemisms, there's innuendos, and I just don't think that younger audiences are going to appreciate the jokes. So I wouldn't recommend it for kids, but in terms of accessibility for a mass audience, I went with a few friends, one of which doesn't like comic books, doesn't really like superheroes, doesn't really have any interest in something that is fantasy-based, and he thought it was hilarious and he really enjoyed himself. So that speaks volumes about the accessibility of this film. And I think if you get what this film is about, if you understand the fourth wall breaking, if you understand the meta humour, then I think you will really appreciate the film. In short, I loved Deadpool. I had a great time at the cinema. It was an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes of just pure fun. The action was well shot and well choreographed. The effects, I know it was a very small budget considering 20th Century Fox usually throw like $200 million at an X-Men movie. This only had like 58 million or something like that. So it was a very sort of small budget. This was an indie flick in comparison, but it used the money wisely. And because of that, and what they managed to achieve with such a small budget and a very short shooting schedule, this film was made very quickly and put together very quickly if you really follow the development of it. I have a huge amount of faith in what they can pull off for a sequel. My only gripe is what I mentioned earlier, and it's that even though it's poking fun at the superhero origin story, it does still make some of the same mistakes. Now, as I said, fortunately, because of the narrative and the way that they structured it, it keeps it a bit fresh, but still, it's sometimes it's a bit of a chore because it's so formulaic. But other than that, I loved it, and I'm glad that it's as good as it is. As always, thank you for watching. If you've got something to say, leave a comment down below. If you like the video, click thumbs up, and please hit subscribe to see more.